watching The End Zone, sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
Welcome to another edition of The End Zone along with TJ Eckert. I am Colby Daniels. What a great time of the sports calendar. I mean, the next few weeks really is nonstop action between conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament. Major League Baseball gets underway with opening day in a couple weeks. We do have the Japan series that's about to get underway, like 2 weeks before everybody else. Golf, right? We have the Players Championship and then the Masters right around the corner, not to mention all of these pro days around college football and the NFL draft. Like, we are in like super turbo mode for about a month-long period.
Yeah, remember we had Matt Burton on, we had the question of what's your favorite month, and I said March, and it's really a continuation of March into early April.
It's like mid-March to mid-April, really, yeah.
Because after this, things, I mean, you got the NBA playoffs that'll end up happening, but after this, it kind of slows down a bit, right? I mean, baseball is such a long season, but it starts kicking off. But then other than that, there's not a whole lot going on. So we need to cherish these next few weeks because this is really one of the best times on the calendar, sports calendar-wise.
That's right. We've got a lot of basketball to talk about, conference tournaments going on, what OU has done to help its NCAA tournament chances. The Thunder had a monster week in terms of matchups, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's start with OU's Pro Day earlier this week. I was out there in Norman watching the guys work out for NFL scouts. You know, pro days, I've been to most of the OU pro days over the last like 10 to 12 years. This one obviously didn't have the fanfare that like the Baker Mayfield pro day had when you're talking about a #1 overall pick or Kyler Murray. And you add, you know, Danny Stutzman only bench pressing, which he didn't do at the combine. So he benched at pro day and that was it. That was all he did earlier this week. Billy Bowman didn't work out at all. He leaned on his combine numbers. Same thing for Ethan Downs. That definitely takes some of the sizzle out of Pro Day, but it's still an opportunity for all those other guys that may not be draft picks to at least land on an NFL radar and get one of those coveted invites to camp, right? And try and show your worth.
Felt like to me, and you can speak on it probably a little bit more, most of social media, the buzz was Trace Ford. And I think that was kind of
100%.
the guy that kind of stole the show for OU guys. And there you go, you can see him right there. He's a guy that fits well in an NFL system because he's a really good pass rusher. Just didn't have the production that maybe you expected because he was injured so much. So it was good seeing him put up some really good numbers and then have a pretty decent workout as well. That's a guy, you mentioned it. It's hard to fit into a camp or get to a camp, so doing something like this can really benefit you.
He's one of those guys that not only, I think, benefited from something like this because he's so athletically gifted. He's going to turn some heads from NFL scouts, but he has a trait that everybody wants in the NFL, which is the ability to rush the passer. I think, you know, you look at maybe the productivity in terms of on the field in his time in Norman, and that maybe wasn't there the same way it was at Oklahoma State. But everybody knows he can rush the passer. He talked about it in his media availability the other day, that he's become a more well-rounded football player. All that said, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy at the next level that they want to come in and play 3 downs, right? The NFL has become so specialized. Where they want to bring you in for a situation, unless you're a generational talent, they want to bring you in for a situational type of impact. And Trace Ford's ability, I think, to just go get the quarterback certainly is going to give him an opportunity to get into a camp and make an impression.
Yeah, it's you mentioned it being specialized, and in a way, in Norman, it started to get that way with him a little bit. He played more than just 1 down on defense row, but he really specialized or came in obvious passing situations and did a pretty good job with it. So I think that element of his game translates well to the next level. He also played a handful of special teams as well. I don't know if that's something he ended up doing at the next level. There's a lot of really athletic guys in the NFL, but he did do that at OU, so maybe something else he can slide in.
His 10-inch broad jump, 36-inch vertical, I mean, his testing numbers, I think, will tell special teams coaches in the NFL, like, hey, let's look out for this guy. And for a lot of guys, that's how they get their opportunity, right? And maybe that develops into something more, but most of the time, guys like Trace Ford that aren't a first or second day draft pick, their only way to make a team is special teams.
Anybody else kind of jump off the page at you? I know he obviously stole the show, but anybody else you're like, man, that guy actually outperformed what I thought.
He just outperformed, I think, everybody else to the point that would be the guy I would say. I mean, you know, Woody Washington's been around for a long time, and I know a couple years ago there was draft buzz about what he might be, and you know, his playing time seemed to kind of diminish as his career went on. You know, DeJoun Terry's a guy that I think could be interesting just as an interior defensive lineman and getting an opportunity at the next level. But, you know, the big three, I think, out of Oklahoma are Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, who are guarantees to hear their names called in the NFL draft. And then I think Ethan Downs is the other one that tested really well at the combine, so he didn't work out at Pro Day. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. I think there's definitely a chance, but his versatility along the defensive line gives him a chance.
Well, and you mentioned hearing from all the guys. Billy Bowman obviously talked, and I was listening to some of the stuff that you got, and he mentioned everything you've been saying. It's like I'm leaning on the numbers that I had got at the combine. There's no reason for me to go out and do anything else, right? So the fact he was just there supporting his guys, and that's great. But I don't know how much he gained draft stock wise from the combine. I feel like he showed out pretty well.
A lot.
So I don't know where he's going to slide. I'm not good at the mock drafting stuff.
Yeah.
But feels like he did himself a lot of favors in Indianapolis, so there's no reason for him to compete.
That's right.
In Pro Day.
He turned a lot of heads at the Senior Bowl, and then I think at the Combine he capitalized on some of that momentum. And most people mention him as a big winner from the Combine. So lean on those numbers. Don't do anything to hurt what you've already done. And I think he's going to be a guy that hears his name called. So before we take a break, I do got to get to one bit of sound that we got from earlier this week. This had me rolling, and I don't know if any of the other media members caught it at Pro Day, but Danny Stutzman went full Super Troopers on us. I was trying not to laugh. Like, I was kind of chuckling but trying to stay still because I'm shooting the interview. I look around when Danny Stutzman's gone, and nobody else was even smiling. So I don't know if I was the only one that got it or what, but it's gained a lot of traction on social media. So let's count these Super Trooper meows from Danny Stutzman here.
Yeah, I think for him, right now it's a pretty good move for him. I think he busts his tail more than anyone. I think right now he's really just adjusting to it and just what it takes to be a good tight end.
You think you can cover him?
100%. I think there's still levels to it. I think right now he's trying to, he's right there at beginner, and for me right now I'm kind of a veteran compared to him.
All right, I caught 4 meows in 22 seconds of Danny Stutzman talking about Jaron Kanak, who also dropped a meow in his media availability earlier this week. Those two guys are characters.
Could have sworn you said meow. Isn't that the line from the driver in Super
like, are you saying meow?
Are you saying meow? He definitely, that's good stuff. I love that they have a little fun like that. That just makes it all the more enjoyable.
I mean, some people may not get it, but if you get it, it's like, this
gold.
is fun,
it's
right?
Good,
like
clean fun.
Yeah, it just adds something to what everybody's out there, everybody's out there doing their jobs. Why not smile in the process? All right, we're going to take a timeout. We're talking OU hoops, and have they punched their way to the NCAA tournament next here on The Inside. All right, we're all anxiously awaiting Sunday for the NCAA tournament selections. A lot of debate going into the final week of the college basketball regular season about whether OU was in or out. They were on the bubble, right? I think for a couple of weeks they were kind of playing the hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out with the bubble, according to Joe Lunardi. They've played really well down the stretch, and they turned it into some wins, and I think they're playing their best basketball of the season, at least, down the stretch. Have they done enough, TJ, to give you a lot of confidence or maybe a little confidence that they will hear their name called on Sunday?
I think going into the week, we felt like they had a pretty good chance of being in. We've said that a lot for Porter Moser's teams in the years past, and then they've ultimately been left out. So it was almost this feeling of you're kind of in control of your own destiny in a way.
Yeah.
So beating who they beat? Georgia in the opening round. I almost said Mississippi State. Beating Georgia in the opening round, I think, to me, solidified it. And it just feels like they did so much in the non-conference to kind of help buoy what they did not do in the middle part of the SEC play. And they've played well down the stretch, like you mentioned, to give them that jolt of energy they needed to get over the top. And we've mentioned it a lot, too. The bubble's not very good. So that helps them, too. The fact that just because they're losing games doesn't mean they're necessarily out, and the fact that other teams have been losing as well has really kind of, I think, kept them in the discussion for sure.
I don't know how much is taken into account in terms of perception of a team, but you can have two teams that maybe statistically look the same, but one team is limping down the stretch, and the other team is sort of like gaining steam. That's got to play a factor, and 3 weeks ago maybe OU would have been on the wrong side of that. But the way that they started non-conference play versus the way they're finishing non-conference play, they get the 2 wins on the final week of non-conference, enter the tournament. I think at that point, a lot of people felt like the Texas win solidified their NCAA tournament chances. There were other people that said they need at least 1 win in the SEC tournament to get there. I feel very confident that they're going to get in, but that's also barring a bunch of bids being stolen, right? Which always happens. And if you have too many teams that aren't supposed to go to the tournament win their conference tournaments and steal bids, OU could be in trouble. But if we don't see a tremendous amount of those take place, I think Oklahoma's in.
It won't be as extreme as the 2018 with Trae Young, where there was all this national buzz around how good of a player he was, and people wanted to see him in the tournament. OU really limped down the stretch that year, and they still got in the tournament. And I think a lot of it was because of Trae, and people wanted to see Trae in the tournament. The selection committee wouldn't say that, but that I think played a big factor. I don't think it's, again, not the exact same with Jeremiah Fears, but I think there's a lot of people that want to see him play at a high level in the NCAA tournament. And so I think that certainly doesn't hurt your chances.
Right.
If it comes down to it and you're picking between teams, you're like, well, this kid's going to be probably a lottery pick. We'd love to see what he does in March. That might help them out a little bit too.
I always look at it as like, could this team go beat some people, right? And like last year, they were left out, but I didn't have any confidence that they would be able to beat anybody last year. Like, I have a lot more confidence that this team could actually beat people. And to your point about Jeremiah Fears, midway through conference, he was struggling, right? It felt like he was a little bit overwhelmed by the size and speed of these SEC opponents. He's really settled in. He looks like a completely different guy from a confidence standpoint, and really the overall production and floor generalship has shown that.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like he's made adjustments in his game. He's still being aggressive, but he's also being aggressive in his decision-making, too. There's been some times in the midway point of the year where he was very passive, and it was almost like he didn't know what he was supposed to do when he was driving to the bucket. It's like, do I keep going, try to finish? Do I try to dish it out? And there was a lot of turnovers forced because of that. Now it's like he's just being really decisive. And even if guys are missing open shots when he's dishing it out to them, he's still showing confidence to get the ball to those guys in open space. So yeah, he's really played well. The dynamic between at one point in the season we were like he's going to be a top 5 pick to man he should probably benefit from coming back for another year to now it's like okay he's gone. Same thing with Porter Moser. We talked about it last week. He was fired by the fan base 2-3 weeks ago, and now it's like well okay this guy can lead this team on a March run because he's done it before. It's crazy how things can sway in athletics and specifically in college athletics.
Speaking of a March run, we will cross that bridge next in Smash or Punt here on the End Zone. Welcome back to the End Zone. It is time for Smash or Punt. I'll make a statement. If you agree with it, you smash that statement. If you disagree with it, you are punting it away. So let's get started. All right. John Mateer was at Pro Day. He was really getting along with his teammates. Looked like a natural leader. We know how productive he was at Washington State. So my question for you, John Mateer in 2025 will rank among the top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC in production.
Because off the top of my head, I can't think of 5 others.
Okay.
I'll say smash, but that's only because right now off the top of my head I'm trying to think of other guys. So Nussmeier's back at LSU,
Nussmeier's back.
Arch Manning's at Texas. I mean, who's the kid at A&M? Is he back?
Marcel Reed, I believe, is.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking of like the bigger name guys, and right now
Nico
I can't think of 5.
Iamaleava,
at Tennessee.
Lenora Sellers at South Carolina. Diego Paiva, is that right? The Vandy quarterback.
Because Milroe's gone, Carson Beck's gone. Sure, why not? And maybe he's 5th, but I think he's played well enough in his past, and he looks like he's a natural-born leader right now. So sure, we'll give him 5th. Smash.
This is a tough one because I think OU's offense is going to be much better than they were a year ago, which was historically bad.
Right.
A lot of people view their schedule as the toughest in college football.
True.
That said, I think there's only a couple guys that I would say are guaranteed to have better production.
Right.
And that's Arch Manning and Garrett Nussmeier. Outside of that, I think he's in the mix with that next group. And I think being under an offensive coordinator that already knows how to maximize his abilities, give me the smash on John Mateer for 2025 production. All right, let's. I mentioned the OU basketball bridge to dancing in the NCAA tournament. OU will dance to the Sweet 16. Smash or punt.
We mentioned it last week. It's so matchup dependent, right? And I don't know what the matchup's going to be. So I will punt, but I'm punting very cautiously because I do think the formula is there for this team to have success. Ask me if we could ask this question on Monday, next Monday, right? I would feel more confident. But
that's not as fun, though.
I know.
Right?
So I'll punt because I think they run into a tough matchup maybe in the second round if they win their first game.
With blind matchups, I'm going to punt away as well. But I agree with our conversation last week. I do think the ingredients are there if they get the right draw to make a little noise.
Yeah.
All right, let's stick with basketball and hit the Thunder. Isaiah Hartenstein is the best center in Thunder history.
Whoa. Man, first you came after, was it last week you asked me that SGA had surpassed Russ in terms
Will
of...
SGA surpass Russ in terms of favorite Thunder player?
First off, you're trying to cast off a Thunder legend in Russ. Now you're trying to cast off a Thunder legend in Steven Adams. That's hard to do. I'll punt for now.
Oh, so you're just saying Steven Adams is there over Perk, huh?
Well, yeah.
I'm kidding. Of course he is. Of course he is.
Don't bring up that name. He's like Voldemort on this show. I'll punt because Steven Adams, in terms of fanfare and then his production for an extended period of time, trumps what Isaiah Hartenstein's done in this half season he's been here, basically.
I'm going to smash it. I know it's been a short amount of time, but first of all, he looks like the missing ingredient for a team that might win a championship. And I think just in terms of his all-around game, everything that he brings to the table, like they can run the offense through this guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
On top of the fact that he's a big body on the other end and can impact shots and rebound.
Yeah.
He brings everything that they need to the table. I'm going to smash Isaiah Hartenstein as the best Thunder center.
A quick point, I do think that Adams was exactly what that Thunder team needed as well.
I agree with
physical,
that.
Demanding presence down low. So I think there's very similar. There's a lot of similarities between both of them for sure.
All right, let's hit golf for a minute. You're a big golf guy.
Yay.
The Players' Championship, which is taking place this weekend, should be played in May. Smash or punt?
With the way the new schedule's set up, I'm good punting it and leaving it in March because they're doing Players in March, Masters in April, PGA in May, U.S. Open. So like they have one big event a month. I'm fine with the way the schedule sets up right now. It does have to compete a little bit with college basketball.
Oh, it has to compete a lot with college basketball.
But the more you move it back, you're starting to compete with the NBA playoffs too. So that makes it challenging. So I'm good with where it's at. I'll punt, right? Yeah, punt. It needs to be in March.
I'm going to smash. I think they moved it to March in like 2019-ish.
It's fairly recent, yeah.
It's not been too long, but I liked it where it was. I know the PGA Championship is around that date now, but what's wrong with having two big tournaments in 1 month, right?
Yeah,
capitalize on a stretch from the Masters. Like, get your golf season going with the Masters, the Players Championship, and the PGA in about a month span. Yeah. And then it doesn't get lost in the mix of all the chaos in sports that we have going right now. All right, final one. A sandwich can't be considered dinner.
I saw this argument. Scott Van Pelt was doing that argument, right?
He was, yes, he was.
It is a lunch item, but it is there. If it depends what you put on the sandwich, like a PB&J.
So
maybe not.
So collectively, you don't agree. It's situational.
I think it's situational.
Okay.
So can't be considered dinner. That's kind of an in-between question because it can be depending on what's on the sandwich. So I'll say punt because if you have a chicken sandwich, like a Subway sandwich like that, that's a dinner.
Okay.
But if it's like a ham and turkey sandwich, like that's not enough.
Smash sandwiches are the greatest thing on planet Earth. I'll eat a sandwich for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
All right, we're talking Thunder Hoops next here on The End Zone. All right, one final time this week, along with TJ Eckert, I am Colby Daniels. The Thunder had a big week, right? Starting on Sunday, where they had back-to-back matchups against the Denver Nuggets, who won the NBA title a couple years ago, and probably their biggest challengers in the Western Conference. Wednesday night, they go to the defending champion Boston Celtics and get the big W. They go 2-1 in that three-game stretch over 4 days against big-time competition. This team, we've said it for weeks, I think is, if fully healthy, the best team in the NBA, and will go on to win a championship. How big of a statement was Wednesday night for you?
I called the win against the Celtics the best win of the year. And there's a lot of variables in play there. The biggest one being they didn't have Jalen Williams. And it's like you're missing one of your all-stars. And you went to Boston, defending champs, and you beat them. And really, I know the game was kind of back and forth, but they did their typical Thunder run in that third quarter and pulled away by double figures. Boston hit a bunch. They took way too many threes. That was unbelievable how many threes they took. But I called it the win of the year, and I stand by that because it was, you said it, a statement really was made by them, and it was impressive.
I think throughout the season, they've been so focused on doing what they do, right, and not necessarily paying attention to matchups too much. But without J-Dub, they were kind of forced to match up a little bit with Boston, and you see why they're going to be so successful in the postseason, their ability to just play so many different ways and so many different lineups to play big or small.
Yeah.
They can really beat you up big if you're going to go small or match you small. They just have so much versatility. I think it was absolutely a statement win. Before we go, SGA's MVP odds after the Sunday night win against, or Sunday afternoon win against Denver spiked to like minus 800. Yeah. They came back to minus 400 after Denver's win. SGA, you think he's going to cruise?
I don't know about cruise, but I think he's still the favorite, and I'd still pick him right now if I had the money to gamble on it. So, yeah, I'd pick
SGA for MVP. Yeah. And that's it for us. We'll be back next week. That's CJ Eckert. I'm Colby Daniels. Have a great weekend.